8 years ago, Freddie Carlos Gray Jr. died as a result of injuries sustained while in police custody in Baltimore. His death was preventable. ASEE remembers Freddie Gray's life as we gather here in Baltimore for our annual conference. Welcome to the Tuesday Plenary. We hope that you are having a great time at this year's ASEE Annual Conference. We have some excellent sessions and special events lined up for today. The annual conference is absolutely the highlight of the year for me, but I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to remind you of all the other opportunities that ASEE membership provides you throughout the year. There are 8 other national conferences being organized by ASEE between now and next year's annual conference in Portland, Oregon. The First Year Engineering Experience Conference, which is in July, is a great opportunity to discuss and share relevant topics about the first-year engineering experience. The Engineering Technology Leadership Institute is the annual meeting of stakeholders in engineering technology education. The ASEE Educational Research and Methods Division and IEEE co-sponsor the Frontiers in Education Conference, which is a major international conference focused on engineering education. The Public Policy Colloquium of the ASEE Engineering Deans Council has a dual role: to strengthen discussions between engineering deans and key public policymakers, and to enable the deans to refine their public policy agenda. The ASEE Conference for Industry and Education Collaboration is organized by 4 ASEE divisions, and it includes workshops and other sessions emphasizing the long and mutually beneficial partnerships between education, industry, and government. The vision of the Connected Conference is to provide a forum for exploring current research and practices to enhance diversity and inclusion of all underrepresented populations in the engineering and computing professions. The Research Leadership Institute, hosted by the ASEE Engineering Research Council, includes exciting speakers and opportunities to connect with colleagues on topics critical to the success of research leadership. And finally, the Engineering Deans Institute provides an opportunity for engineering deans to gather and discuss crucial issues facing their schools, colleges, and the profession. You can learn more about each of these conferences on the ASEE website. ASEE is geographically divided into 4 zones, each of which is further divided into 3 sections. Almost every year, each of these 12 sections hosts a section conference. These conferences are often quite conveniently located and inexpensive to attend. My first introduction to ASEE was presenting at a section conference of the Illinois-Indiana section, and I've never looked back since. I'd like to thank everyone who has ever volunteered or hosted an ASEE section conference. And if you have never attended a section conference, I encourage you to go to one this year. ASEE Learning offers dozens of workshops and online webinars every year, which are focused on promoting the professional development of our members. This area of ASEE has grown very significantly over the past 5 years. This growth has been intentional and was done in response to feedback from our members. Most prominent among the ASEE Learning workshops are the Delta Institutes, each of which focuses on preparing engineering and engineering technology professionals for the next step in their careers. From graduate students to new faculty to junior faculty, Delta Institutes help prepare future educators to take the next step in their career path. And if you're considering becoming a department leader or a dean, there's a Delta Institute for you too. Even when there isn't a conference or a workshop taking place, you can access ASEE publications 365 days a year. ASEE Prism is the flagship publication of ASEE, and the Journal of Engineering Education and Advances in Engineering Education provide opportunities for our members' work to be published and read in high-quality, peer-reviewed archival journals. Profiles of Engineering and Engineering Technology is also an essential source for data related to engineering and engineering technology programs nationwide. A wide variety of high-quality division journals also provide valuable research opportunities for our members. including the Chemical Engineering Education Journal, the Computers in Education Journal, the Engineering Design Graphics Journal, the Journal of Engineering Technology, and the Engineering Economist. Finally, you can also access ASEE Peer, which is an online database that includes all papers presented at the ASEE Annual Conference and many other ASEE national and sectional conferences since 1996. You can even search by author name if you find someone whose work is particularly relevant to your own. Or if you want to see how many papers you've published with ASEE, you can do that too. Even with all of these exciting existing activities, we continue to seek new initiatives to provide more value for our members. During my year as president, I'm working on an initiative to promote mentoring for ASEE members. During my year, mentoring is central to the work of ASEE's members, whether it is in the classroom, through academic advising, in student organizations, or in research teams. It is also essential to help develop the next generation of engineering and engineering technology, educators, and leaders. There are many existing ASEE efforts to promote and encourage mentoring. Here are just a few of the many ASEE units and programs that have a focus on mentoring. The Engineering Leadership Division, the Engineering Libraries Division, the Archival Publication Authors Workshop for Engineering Educators, funded by Keene, Cyber MSI, funded by the National Science Foundation, the Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the new Engineering Educators Division, the ASEE First Year Programs Division, the First Year Engineering Experience Conference, the Commission on Pre-K through 12 Engineering Education, the Engineering for One Planet mini-grant program funded by the Lemelson Foundation, the Minority Mentorship Program funded by Chevron, the E-Fellows Program funded by the National Science Foundation, and the Delta Institutes that we discussed earlier include a mentoring component. The Mentoring for All program has two primary goals. First, to provide a common framework to strengthen all of ASEE's existing mentorship programs, and second, to expand those programs to offer mentoring to all of our members, most especially those from historically underrepresented groups in engineering. ASEE's senior leadership team and board of directors are also very focused on growing our membership over the next year. Doing so will help us to build a strong foundation for the future of our society. It will expand the impact of our efforts, and it will provide significant benefits to our new members. This effort is also directly aligned with the mentoring initiative that I described previously. Many ASEE members join ASEE as a result of mentoring that they receive from other faculty or leaders at their own universities. And once they join ASEE, they have the opportunity to meet a whole new world of mentors who encourage them to be active and take on leadership roles within the organization. I'm going to leave this slide up for a little bit so you can scan the QR code. On Thursday, after the conference ends, the ASEE senior leadership team and the board of directors will be meeting all day to discuss how best to grow our membership. We'd love to have your suggestions. Remember that membership could be individuals, institutions, or corporate members. Please access the Google form that's linked to this QR code to share with us any ideas you have for innovative ways to encourage new members to join. And now I would like to recognize the 2022 Best Pick Paper, Best Zone Paper, Best Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Paper, and the 2023 National Outstanding Teaching Award. As academics and those seeking continuous improvement of engineering education, an ASEE conference paper is an essential vehicle to share our work. These papers are, in some ways, the lifeblood of what we do and are the foundation of this annual conference. In light of that, I am honored to recognize our peers who are the authors of this year's best papers. ASEE is thorough and rigorous in choosing our best paper winners. The overall best zone paper is chosen from among the numerous nominated papers from the ASEE sections. For the best pick paper, the divisions within each of ASEE's 5 picks can nominate an outstanding paper. Each pick chair, working with a committee, will determine the best paper from their pick. Then the 5 pick chairs identify the best overall pick paper. In choosing the best diversity, equity, and inclusion paper, individual paper reviewers are asked to nominate manuscripts that address any aspect of diversity. A subcommittee of the ASEE Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion then chooses the best paper from those nominees. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the stage the Zone 2 Chair, Charles McIntyre, to introduce the best overall zone paper.
Good morning. I'm Charlie McIntyre, Zone 2 Chair, and it is my pleasure to introduce the 2022 Best Zone paper entitled Flipping the Heat Transfer Classroom, authored by Jessica Lofton from the University of Evansville, Illinois. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is my honor to be up here this morning sharing the stage with the Best Paper Award recipients, and I'd like to share with you just a snapshot of my paper, Flipping the Heat Transfer Classroom. Overall, the paper can be characterized as to 2 main themes. The first theme being the instructor experience and what went into the course design and the transition from a traditional lecture-based format to a flipped classroom format. Flipped classrooms aren't new, but they aren't commonly found in courses like heat transfer. The second overarching theme is a sharing of results from 2 cohorts. The first cohort was in 2019, which was pre-pandemic. That was my first experience with the flipped classroom. It was also the students' first experience with the flipped classroom, and especially their first experience in an engineering course. And my students are seniors in mechanical engineering. So I compared those results to a 2021 cohort, which is students returning to in-person learning after having gained some experience for online and remote hybrid type work as well. In the paper, I go into more detail for the design of the course materials and the content and how that switch was made to a flipped format and the considerations that were taken into account. I talk about the instructor preparation, time investment. It is a huge upfront time investment, but it pays off in the long run. And also modes of creating course content, modes of delivery, and how students are expected to interact with the course materials. I conclude with some of the modifications that were made based on student feedback, and then 10 tips for a smooth flip. If you're interested in flipping any of your courses, that might be a helpful resource to address some of the challenges that you could face. The results are primarily self-reported student responses to Likert scale and open response prompts, and those are evaluated with student surveys and course evaluations. I did look at exam scores, however, those results were not statistically significant, so those aren't emphasized. I do want to draw your attention to the quote at the bottom of the slide from one of the students in the 2021 cohort, which harkens back to the original intent of switching to the flipped class format. Heat transfer is considered one of the more challenging courses in our program, so I wanted to improve student understanding and comfort level with the material by taking advantage of the engagement that we could have in a flipped class format through active learning, peer learning, and subject matter expert guided practice. So again, the detail you can find in the paper, but some of the main observations that came from this 2-cohort study were that there was an increase in deeper learning and deeper engagement with the material, and that came really with all students in the course, even the shy ones that might not normally speak up or come to office hours. Another huge benefit that I found as the instructor was the conversations that I was having with students was more detailed, higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, so I could see that that understanding was really having an impact, or the flipped classroom was having an impact on their level of understanding. The most common constructive feedback for students for what would you change about this course was always less homework, so lighter load. To give you a snapshot of the types of materials that were created in the transition from a traditional lecture-based course to a flipped course, I did share all of the online content in video format through YouTube, but I also shared the original source files that I created as PDFs or PowerPoints so that students could choose how they interacted with the material. This is what I created for my heat transfer course. Students were required to watch the lecture videos. The example problem videos were just a heavily suggested resource to use. This is a brief sample of some of the student responses, the results. The prompts in the Likert scale surveys were really to gauge how students were interacting with the material and how they perceived their experience with the course and the impacts on their learning. So again, if you'd like more detail, I'm happy to share the paper with you or talk with you after this session. Thank you so much for your time this morning. It's an honor to be here. Have a great conference.
Hello, I am John Estelle, Vice President of Professional Interest Councils. It is my pleasure to introduce the 2022 Best Overall Pick paper. The 2022 Best Overall Pick paper winner is The Impact of Math and Science Remedial Education on Engineering Major Choice, Degree Attainment, and Time to Degree. The authors are Joyce B. Main from Purdue University and Amanda Griffith from Wake Forest University.
Hi, everyone. Good morning for joining us for today's session and also for the opportunity to share a little bit of this research, which I conducted with Amanda Griffith at Wake Forest University. For this particular research, we examined the impact of remedial education on engineering major choice, likelihood of graduation, and time to degree. In order to do this, we used a series of logistic and linear regressions, which included a matrix of variables, including demographic characteristics, and a series of math and science achievement measures, such as STEM AP courses taken during high school and composite SAT scores, as well as math placement scores taken at the college level. We also included cohort fixed effects to capture trends in the outcomes and also used robust standard errors. Importantly, we compared the outcomes between students who took remedial courses in their first year to students who did not. Now, our data comes from a selective public research university in the Midwest. Our sample size includes 33,693 students who enrolled between fall 2001 and 2016, and we followed them through 6 years of their course study, or 4 to 6 years of their course study. Upon entry, students take a math placement exam. The results of this particular exam, along with the student's previous academic achievement, are considered for their math placement into calculus or another math course in preparation for calculus. So what is remedial education? In general, they're courses intended to help address the differential preparation of incoming college students. Remedial courses can be offered in math, physics, and other subjects to help prepare students to access courses with prerequisites and also to help students complete courses that are required for their intended major. In engineering, remedial courses may be offered to students who are college ready but may not have had opportunities to take more advanced math and science courses during high school. In general, remedial courses are offered at both 2-year and 4-year post-secondary institutions, both public and private. Because remedial courses are taken by so many post-secondary students across different types of academic institutions, it's critical to evaluate whether remedial courses are effective in improving academic outcomes and whether the effects vary across different academic contexts. So what do we know about remedial education? In general, Previous studies that focus on the effects of remediation show three main possible outcomes, including positive development for future coursework, which is the general intention, potential diversion into a separate track or a different major, or discouragement from further study. The general finding across remedial education and post-secondary education is mixed. Previous studies suggest that remedial math, for example, does not improve student performance moving forward. It's important to note that previous studies have tended to focus at the two-year college level. So there are relatively few studies examining this at the four-year college sector, which tends to admit students with high levels of math and science preparation. The research that has been conducted at the four-year setting has found that students with highest academic achievement who are assigned to remedial education often experience the largest negative impacts on their persistence and degree completion. So this finding is especially important to engineering education, which in general admits students with high levels of math and science preparation. And that's what we looked at. So what we found was that for students, remediation at this particular engineering college setting, which is a research-intensive institution, remediation appears to appear more as a discouragement for students from further engineering studies. Our study found that remedial courses, while intended to benefit students, they are less likely to declare engineering on time, to stay in engineering, and to graduate. It appears that the requirement to take remedial courses places students at a disadvantage in their progress through the engineering degree, slowing them down, and for some, discouraging them from further study. Thus, we propose that this transition point in the student academic pathway is critical. High school math and science preparation has important consequences for the likelihood of students entering and completing engineering programs. And one of the notes that we want to point out is that there is this misalignment between high school math course offerings and engineering program requirements that warrants further study. Hence, our future work will investigate further how students make course placement decisions and how engineering programs can further support students with differential preparation. Thank you again for your time this morning, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Hello, I'm Katie Sherry, Awards Co-Chair for the Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm pleased this morning to be here to introduce the 2022 Best Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion paper. The 2022 Best Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion paper is Integrating Race, Gender, and Indigenous Knowledge in the Introductory Physics Curriculum. The author is Prith Banerjee. He's from the University of Detroit, Mercy.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to be with all the other award winners. It's such a privilege, and I'm still in a bit of a daze about it. In 2018, I was reviewing a paper for a different conference, and in doing my due diligence, I came across this quote, which really bothered me. I'm going to read that quote out along with you. It was written in 1945, so the language reflects that. Unfortunately for the Negro science major, the very subject in which he is interested has been formulated by Caucasians. It also appears as if all the contributions on his subject were made by men of the white race. Generally, he can find nothing that he can point to with pride as a contribution by a Negro. Dr. Joseph Williams was a past president of Beta Kappa Chi, the premier Black scientific honor society. In fact, they're celebrating 100 years today, this year. This bothered me to the point I really had to ask myself, how do I change the curricular content in my introductory physics class? It's not just a question of making the class a more welcoming environment, it is also a question of making the content more welcoming and more inclusive. So, at the heart of my project and this journey that I'm on is this question: who does physics, who doesn't, and under what conditions? And of course, this question can also be asked of all science and engineering. So my goal was to try to broaden the social and cultural context in which physics knowledge is created and utilized, and to ask, how do people end up doing the things that they end up doing, and how does society function in that way? So I really wanted to bring that element into my physics course. These ideas are not new. I would recommend people go to the Underrepresentation Curriculum Project to take a look at some of these ideas that they have pushed. So what did I do? Well, I had my students read books, and it may sound crazy that in a physics class I'm making them read yet another book when they don't already read their physics textbooks, but I'll tell you, it works really well, because these two historical biographies, Hidden Figures and The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, bring a lot of life and biographies into, and they're suffused with physics concepts. Hidden Figures, for example, has a lot of concepts about rocketry, wing design, wind tunnel experiments, and so on, within the context of racial segregation, racial violence, and war, and the Cold War. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind is about a young inventor from Malawi who built a windmill while suffering starvation, poverty, and famine, and environmental degradation caused by the tobacco farming in Malawi. But in the middle of it, we're talking about windmills, we're talking about electrodynamics, magnetic induction, and so on. So my goal in using these books was to craft physics assignments that follow the narrative, that use the narrative in these stories in order to make physics assignments that my students are forced to read this book, find the information in it in order to help them solve the physics assignments. But along with it, I also included social, cultural reflections that they had to complete. So here's one example from Hidden Figures. I asked them to calculate the forces and accelerations on a P-51 Mustang fighter bomber. Now that figure on the right is found in most introductory physics textbooks, except if you're not familiar, the P-51 Mustang is the aircraft that was flown by the Tuskegee Airmen and is talked about in the book, Hidden Figures. So my students got to go see learn more about the Tuskegee Airmen and come back and do a typical physics problem, but now the connection is to the Hidden Figures and the work that they did and to the Tuskegee Airmen. And then I asked them to talk about the segregation that happened in their workplace in Langley, Virginia, and how it violated President Roosevelt's prohibition of discrimination in Executive Order 8802. Here's one from The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. I asked them to calculate the peak voltage in the windmill that William Kamkwamba, the young man, created. But at the same time, I asked them to talk about the role of tobacco farming in the lives of ordinary Malawians, which is a very complex and nuanced problem. In particular, the windmill was built from spare parts got from scrapyards in the tobacco estates. So in the interest of time, I'll skip over the student responses, which were better in the post-survey than they were in the pre. My students enjoyed it. And I'll get to this. In 25 years of teaching, I didn't get comments like this in my student responses. A student telling me that, I think I'm a better student and a better person for having read these books. Or, I learned about how someone can use physics to change their lives and that physics can be so inspiring. I read it seeking physics topics in class, but also learned more about representation in these fields. And to me, that told me more about what my students wanted than anything I had been doing before. So I'll conclude by saying, curricular projects in which we use the storytelling narrative approach can be very powerful and illuminating and enhance our student interests. And I have a number of acknowledgments there that I'll just leave on the screen just for a minute. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Brian Self. I'm the chair of the Outstanding Teaching Awards Committee. As an organization, ASEE is committed to supporting faculty scholarship and systems that develop pedagogical expertise. The Outstanding Teaching Award is designed to provide national recognition to an engineering or engineering technology educator for excellence in outstanding classroom performance, contributions to the scholarship of teaching, and participation in ASEE section meetings and local activities. A few quick notes from the nomination packet highlight our awardee's commitment to education. One student commented that the amount of effort he puts forth to assist us outside of class is exemplary, and I've never experienced someone willing to do those things. He holds meaningful relationships with his past students, becoming not just an academic mentor, but also a life mentor. In addition to winning several teaching awards, including the student-nominated Golden Apple Award, he and his family lived in the residence halls for 7 years to lead a living and learning community. That's 7 years in the dorms. If that's not commitment to his students and education, I don't know what is. So it's my pleasure to announce the ASEE 2023 Outstanding Teaching Award to Krishna Pakala from Boise State University.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheswaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. In Sanskrit, Guru stands for the teacher, who is the remover of darkness and is the harbinger of enlightenment. "20 years ago, I came to this land of opportunity, where the promise was that with education, one could achieve anything they put their mind to. I'm thankful for obtaining my master's from Arizona State University and PhD from University of Wyoming, both in mechanical engineering. Yes, the blue field, go Broncos. I was born on September 5th, which is celebrated as Teachers' Day in India, and was often reminded by my grandmother, who hoped I would continue my grandfather's legacy of serving students in the classroom. He died at a young age, during 40 years old, with a heart attack. My master's advisor, Dr. Don Boyer, was also instrumental in me choosing higher education as a career. While both these amazing souls are not with us, they have helped me found my calling. While we don't all control all the challenges we face, we do have the opportunity how we respond. A growth mindset has been instrumental in helping better support our students. In these 20 years, America has changed a lot. We are no longer the same, and I hope we get back to supporting each other and welcoming all immigrants into this country. All of these identities that I show on the screen have been essential in supporting my students. Being a first-generation PhD student, an immigrant, a father, a son, and being hopefully a beloved husband has been very, very important. My dream as an educator is to transform engineering education by building a modern platform for student success inside and outside the classroom. I say we need a paradigm shift. From several years of research has been focused on this new paradigm, active learning, critical thinking, and embracing innovation, to name a few. I believe a learner-centered higher education ecosystem is essential to providing opportunities for learning and advancement in our society. If you heard Dr. Pines yesterday from the Monday Plenary, he talked about this extensively. We also need to leverage the technology to positively impact the teaching and learning experience for each student in STEM. However, it is also very important for the diffusion of innovation that we as instructors first embrace technologies, not wait for a disruption like COVID pandemic to say, yeah, students can learn online, before helping our students to do so, just like the air hostess would say. As a believer in the power of communities that bridge academic learning with campus life, myself and my family volunteered to live in the residence halls for 7 years, and that has been a life-changing experience for me where my commitment to higher education even strengthened. I began implementing happy hour, a term I coined for virtual office hours in 2013. No beverages are served during this time. I might be consuming at my home. While the walls of a physical office can predetermine student environment, happy hours have no boundaries, enabling an entire class to fully interact. During the pandemic, I wanted my students to succeed academically, but I also wanted to inspire hope, incite joy, help them through tough times, and harness meaningful connections too. When many of us had to shelter in place, I started using social media to reach out and maintain human connections, so that to offset the separateness of social distancing. Student support strategies took a new form in the face of the pandemic. For example, the community building had to happen digitally while still effectively engaging students. People ask me, what is the secret sauce? It's very simple. You follow these 3 magic ingredients, and everybody's happy. Embracing innovation, empowering students, and caring for them has been instrumental in supporting my student success. I credit all my success to my students, who continue to be the source of my energy. My students may not have signed on the recently approved tenure and promotion, but have inspired me to pursue even more leadership in service of students, which I'm doing during my upcoming year-long sabbatical. Thank you to Trevor, who helped me break the invisible glass ceiling. We need many of those people. Thank you, Andy, for your guidance and mentorship. Thank you, Dean Lighty, for all your support. Special thank you to Dean Sabic, who is among the audience today, who hired me in 2012. If she hadn't given me that job within 2 days, I had to leave the country, so I'm forever grateful for her. And who also inspired me to innovate for our students. Julie Martin and Diana, thank you for your belief and faith in me. Thank you to my family. Without their many sacrifices, none of this would have been possible. I continue to leverage technology to enhance student success by elevating pedagogy, and I always keep this mind in quote. We're currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. Thank you to ASEE for bestowing this honor on me, which celebrates the investment of my family, students, and supportive higher education community, especially the ASEE Pacific Northwest section has made in me. To me, teaching, learning is more than a vocation. It has become essential to my identity. Thank you.
Let's give our winners another round of applause. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Deepankar Chowdhury. Dr. Chowdhury is a fellow who leads research and development and coordinates open innovation programs at ANSYS, an engineering simulation software firm based in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. He is responsible for advanced technology and exploratory projects in several areas at ANSYS, including computational fluid dynamics, simulation-based design products, and high-performance computing. At ANSYS, Dr. Chowdhury leads technical due diligence as part of the mergers and acquisitions team. He earned his PhD in computational fluid dynamics and heat transfer from the University of Minnesota. Dr. Chowdhury is an adjunct faculty member at the University of Notre Dame and is a frequent lecturer in courses and seminar series at leading technical institutions worldwide. He is a member of ASEE, ASME, and AIAA. He has technical publications in journals, conference proceedings, and trade magazines. Please welcome Dr. Deepankar Chowdhury.
Good morning, everybody. If I'm looking a little bit worse for wear, I actually didn't sleep much last night because of this last-minute substitution I had to make for the true keynote speaker, Dr. Banerjee from ANSYS. But I do want to welcome the audience, and I'll do my best to give you some thoughts regarding the role of modeling and simulation in the classroom and in education in general. Last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, or this morning, I guess, I had ample opportunity to contemplate all kinds of unhelpful thoughts, like, why did I forget to pack my jacket? Or the shirt that I intended to wear for the evening event is what I actually packed. But there were some serious thoughts, too, as to how do I communicate with this professional, unique group of thinkers who focus on pedagogy who focus on education in engineering, how do I remotely even approach the undoubtedly inspiring speakers like the ones who preceded me and have something useful to say? And I came across this, oddly enough, this obituary in the digital version of New York Times. And many of you may have seen this obituary of someone very well known in our field, Dr. Henry Petrosky at Duke University. He passed sadly some time back. I had read two of his books. One was called The Pencil, and the other one was called The Toothpick. Very prosaic subjects, but he came at it as a structural analyst, somebody focused on stress analysis, a rather potentially esoteric subject for to-be engineers. But the way he communicated the principles and thoughts is something that was very, very change-provoking for somebody like me, because he focused on what engineering is, right? And his definition in my mind is one that approaches most closely when I fumble around trying to explain to lay people and family members as to what engineering is. And what he said was, engineering, or the role of engineering, or the engineer's job, is to create, to innovate, to meet function while avoiding failure, right? And to me, that encapsulates the ethos of what engineering is. And that's what you practice. Does a company like ANSYS, focused on engineering simulation methods, have a role to play there? That's sort of the theme for this particular keynote. By the way, I also had some serious thoughts besides contemplating what I did not pack. So one of those thoughts was about modeling and simulation. Modeling and simulation, as you know, is one of the technologies that is available to teachers and educators. And it's been, I would suppose, continuing its evolution, right? But the last few years have been amazing in the sense that we see more and more presence of these tools as aids that the educator actually draws on to do what they do best, which is teach, right? So as a prior speaker mentioned, these tools will never replace, or technologies in general will never replace excellence in teaching, but they can play a role, and that's sort of what I hope to state in a rather obvious manner. One change, or one pair of dimes that is responsible is that our workplace in industry is changing in a really, really rapid way. And while this was accelerated undoubtedly by the pandemic, there are change events that were already in place. What we call hybrid work. Today, it's not uncommon to go to the workplace and see less than 20% of the staff actually physically present in the office. And this is not changing. This is, yes, people are coming back to work. You'll read lots of articles about companies like ourselves trying to attract engineers and staff back to the office, but it's not going to change. And the reason that I feel that it's not going to change, or at least this hybrid workplace is here to stay, is because we've found different ways of working. And the role of technologies in making that happen, practical, more productive, more efficient, while balancing the need to be social animals, is a challenge that we all face undoubtedly. But this permanence in the hybrid workplace model is a big megatrend that we have to cope with. Another change is what you know and what you have pointed out time and time again in conferences like ASEE, hybrid learning, flipped classrooms, and the way education and way teaching actually happens in this virtual classroom that we all face. And the studies are undoubtedly, you know much more about this area than I do, but this mix of in-class experiential learning, student self-taught or augmented by tools and technologies that are provided by the institution, and the teacher is here to stay as well. So the classroom has changed, and the rise of hybrid learning is something we have to cope with. Finally, coming back to the world of the workplace again, digital engineering is taking off in a huge way. And what do we mean by digital engineering? This overcrowded slide is trying to show you a thread that pervades the process and workflows in how products and processes get designed in the engineering workplace. To the left, we might see engineers as creators, as innovators, as concept evaluators, exploring their space, their design space or concept space virtually. And sometimes by combination, really a hybridization of experimentation, actual workbench work with the virtual workbench that tools, methods, modeling and simulation methods and tools provide. Essentially empowering analysts to do deeper analysis using modeling and simulation methods based on those initial concepts. That thread is now pervasive. That digital thread carries through all the way to testing, evaluation, manufacturing, and then finally back into the engineering creation process or innovation process. So this concept of a digital thread or digital engineering, sometimes we'll use the term digital twin, is here as well. And modeling and simulation is, of course, the foundation of that. So now comes the pitch, if you will, that these physics-based modeling and simulation tools, you see a lot of them in the classroom already, from MathWorks, from ANSYS, from other peers in our field. We feel that this change of using technology in the engineering classroom, modeling and simulation is a critical component of that. And so what can we in industry do to lower the barrier to entry to using modeling and simulation in the classroom? And we tried to break this down into three major topics. Help you in the classrooms grow this pool or resource of simulation-aware, simulation-trained engineers so that when they actually go to the workplace, they not only increase their sophistication in knowledge and use of these tools, but also increase their employability overall. Support research and education in the classroom on campus. And third, these tools that we have created, these powerful simulation tools and methods, provide access, not just the tools themselves, but assets and content that support the online training that's here to stay, for example, even in flipped classroom environments, supporting curriculum development, engaging and supporting student teams, and so on. This particular example you would have seen represents something that is increasingly common. It is showing the example of Chris Zhu in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's a high school student who ended up actually using modeling and simulation tools. Ignore the ANSYS software there, it could well have been others, to really enhance something that is would have been done using paper, pen, or even a prototype that he would have created, which is using a virtual model of a carotid artery and simulate that, not for the sake of actually diagnosing potential root issues in problems in carotid arterial bifurcations, but also to get insights into the physics of hemodynamics in those areas. And the way he did it was he was encouraged by his teachers first and foremost. He used a mix of learning tools available online and in classroom. And then he used software, modeling software, to enhance the overall project-based experiential learning that particular example presents. So this is just simply an example of something that is increasingly common. Then, I'm sorry the slide sounds a little bit preachy as I read it now, but it's sort of one perspective on how this community can take advantage of these technologies and tools. One is bringing the tools themselves into the experiential learning process. They are very accessible now, getting increasingly so. Much more needs to be done there. But perhaps embedding that in teaching the fundamentals, the practice of engineering, and the execution of it is something that could be encouraged through a collaboration and partnership between industry and educators. The second wordy sentence there refers to embedding a set of methods and advances into the classroom. We have talked about modeling and simulation itself, but AI and machine learning methods are increasingly present, and very interesting in the context of modeling and simulation, a hybridization of machine learning and traditional modeling and simulation methods. So that's the future. When we talk about where these technologies are headed to, it's a blending of classical methods and machine learning methods and bringing them to bear in the next level of what could be done in modeling and simulation. So start exposing students to that early on. And digital engineering principles, particularly in the higher levels, in the third or fourth year in engineering, bringing in concepts like digital engineering, model-based engineering, essentially a systems engineering view into the curriculum. And then last but not least, something that's obvious to you, but perhaps using modeling and simulation more is in project-based learning in partnership with those of us in industry and labs and government agencies. With this is an insight into how modeling and simulation is so pervasive, from the engines, the aircraft we fly in, the smartphones, down to humble things like paper cups and plastic bottles used for water or other fluids, and to minimize the plastic usage. Everything uses modeling and simulation in this sort of virtuous circle that we see up there on the screen, which is the ideation, the concept evaluation stage, into the actual design and analysis of the product or process, into manufacturing, into monitoring usage and operations that feed back into the modeling and simulation. So this virtuous circle of virtual prototyping, the sooner we expose engineering students to them, the better it is for all. So that's principle one. The second principle we referred to is digitally transforming the curriculum. This is happening overall. Increasingly, thousands and thousands of educators worldwide are embedding the so-called digital engineering learning principles into curriculum. So let's work on that together. And I've referred to a few aspects of that as well, including lately the skills required to distinguish good engineering from bad engineering and the ethics involved with that. Third principle we touched on was embedding modeling and simulation principles into project-based learning, into design courses, into student teams, and so on. I'm going to skip this. This was essentially talking a little bit about ANSYS and the various tools that we provide to aid and abet. Please stop by the ANSYS booth and talk to me or my colleagues later on today if you'd like to understand a little bit more about what credentials or tools we bring to the picture. I wanted to briefly touch on one example, which is showing you preparation of tools that are suitable in the classroom. One such tool is this so-called discovery tool, and I'm going to just play a little video to show you an application of this modeling and simulation tool in a fluid dynamics modeling situation, where we are looking at a mixing valve. There are two inlets. This sort of immersive modeling environment that is highly accessible to students and design engineers who are not specialists is key. Very often we lose engineering students early on because they don't really right away get the connection between creativity and the excitement of engineering and its practice, right? These sort of tools, I wouldn't call them gamification, but in a way it is. We're able to dynamically change during the modeling and simulation process the model itself to explore. In this particular case, it's a plunger height in that valve, what it does to the flow and the mixing in that valve. This sort of immediate response of the simulation results is now possible with advances in the technology, advances in computing environments. All of this is possible. So these sort of tools are becoming super exciting for educators and students to start exposing their students, not in the master's level or the PhD level, but in undergraduate engineering. Certainly in applications like project work, but also in teaching the fundamental physics. So moving on, there are other tools that are developed as well. This is a tool called EduPack. This is talking about material selection as part of the design process, how the importance of material selection, not just from an engineering behavior perspective, but from a sustainability and traceability of materials perspective is, I think, extremely important to expose students to in the classroom. And here's an example of a tool developed specifically for teaching. So I talked to you about two examples. This is a slide that shows you how curriculum in engineering, of course I picked aero and mechanical, that being my background, but this is also true in chemical engineering, civil engineering, biomedical, electrical engineering, and so on, where this progression from the fundamentals in the first year, where perhaps students are exposed to engineering practice as well. Typically, in my day, this used to be Unix shell scripting, Excel spreadsheets. In fact, a curriculum designed to turn the engineering student off, right? But now, with tools like modeling and simulation that show you something about the physics of what we're trying to actually understand and incorporate into engineering, is key in retaining those students, reducing DFWs, and progressing from that first year fundamentals into materials, strength of materials, heat transfer, fluid mechanics, dynamic statics, etc., into design-oriented courses into the senior year. So this sort of thread, if you will, of using modeling and simulation is, I think, a really fantastic trend on campus. There are lots of resources one can tap into. It's not the tools themselves. This shows you ANSYS's approach to it, which is creating this portal called the Innovation Space and Learning Forum, which is where individual learners and educators can go to access content that can be used to aid and abet what's being taught in the classroom. These are self-contained courses that the educators can draw on to augment the teaching process, sort of self-contained videos, lecture units, tutorials, etc. So with this, I close my presentation saying that these changes, these trends that we touched on during the presentation simply are reflective, if you will, of an opportunity for industry, opportunity for professional societies like the ASEE, accreditation societies, campuses, universities to talk to each other, to link hands, and to meet this challenge of enhancing this curriculum for the new engineering world that is hybrid. Thank you for your patience and appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you again to our esteemed speaker and our guest and our award winners. We hope that you have a great session this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you at 5 o'clock this evening in the exhibit hall. Thank you.